Hello everyone, my name is Miguel Angel. Today I'm with Samantha. She's the membership manager of a nonprofit organization in Charleston. So today I want to ask you a few questions where the goal is to understand how do you implement your business communication skills in your teamwork organization, nonprofit.
Sure, Miguel. That sounds great. I'm happy to answer whatever questions you have. I use communication a lot in my position, working both with my coworkers as well as donors, since I do a lot of fundraising in my position. So please go ahead.
That's great. All right, so here we go with the first question. On a typical day, what type of communication do you think do you use more? By face to face or sending emails?
Sure. I think on a daily basis, I probably use email communication the most frequently, both with external communication with our donors and people who are helping us run our organization, as well as staff members internally. A lot of face-to-face communication happens too, though, being primarily an in-person office, as well as having programs in person that people can attend. So I would say it's a mixture. Occasionally, I'll get on the phone too and do outreach and follow up that way, but probably email and face to face are the big two for me.
That's great. And why do you think is more important face to face? Like, why do you think it's more important face to face than just sending an email?
Sure. I mean, whenever you can have a communication be face to face or even like on a video call as opposed to an email, I think it is something that personalizes the connection a little bit more. We try to do a lot of our meetings with donors and with fundraisers in person as much as we can. Obviously, the digital landscape is different after the pandemic, and people are a lot more comfortable with Zoom and things like that. But I do think it just has a nice personal touch when you're able to make those connections in person.
That's great. And what do you think happens when communication is well done or is done poorly?
Um, yeah, I think it's pretty clear when you have good communication in an organization. Things feel more like a well-oiled machine, and people know kind of what's going on in the workflow and between different departments. Communication is strong, and you see that in the turnout of your organization's programs, how much money you're able to fundraise, kind of things like that are pretty easy, like numerical metrics as far as measuring how well your communication is serving you in an organization. And then I think when there's poor communication in an organization, things can feel disorganized, people have different priorities, so it can just be kind of more difficult to feel like you're all kind of on the same track.
And what do you think are your strengths when you're communicating with your coworkers or your team?
Sure, absolutely. I think when I'm communicating with my coworkers and my team, I always want to make sure people have all of the information that they need in order to perform their job and to carry out what they need to do for their position. So I think, making sure that you give people all of the information when you can, and sooner than later, as well as just resources and things that they may need in order to help complete that. So I think those are pretty big things when working with a team. And then as far as working with like fundraising and donors, and patrons as well, I think making sure that you are, appreciative of their gifts, and are able to show what the good their money is doing for your organization, and for the public community. Hope that answers your question.
And yes, do you think somebody has recognized that on you, like that advantage that
Sure, absolutely.
you have?
I think, that's a big part of why I am working in communication fields and development fields. I really enjoy that kind of communication. And I think that's something that you kind of need to have in order to work in a communications heavy position. And to an extent, all professional jobs, I think, require a certain level of communication. I'm sure that's something that you have found as well, probably in your positions. Communication is key no matter what job, even if your position is not like communication specialist or something like that. It's a skill that we all use. So I think, for me, I think my strength is studying that. My undergraduate degree is in English, so that was a big part of, I learned a lot about written communication with that degree. And then I think just from experience and, working as a professional has really helped me develop those skills kind of in the workplace.
That's great. Have you ever worked from home or just in person?
I've had some jobs that have been kind of a hybrid schedule where I've done some remote work and some in-person work. I worked as an editorial assistant for a magazine for a time, and that was hybrid. And so you can imagine that that's a lot more kind of email communication and check-ins and being able to kind of summarize what you're working on and being able to communicate that to your supervisors is definitely really important. I know with taking some courses online too, that's something that is important as well.
That's great. Okay, the last question. What advice would you give to new students or new professionals that are starting to develop those skills?
Sure. I think being able to speak clearly and with confidence is something that'll get you really far in whatever field you're working in. So just trusting yourself to be able to, put yourself out there, make those connections with people. You never know what those connections are going to bring just by, talking to somebody in your community, whether you're in line to get a coffee or, at a restaurant, you see somebody they recognize. I think always making those connections and being able to represent yourself professionally and also being authentic to yourself is really important.
Yeah, that's great. But especially also because I'm not a native speaker, so sometimes that's kind of hard for me to speak clearly sometimes because I may know the words and like the whole point, but sometimes it still is like harder, I will say, than, for example,
Yeah.
if I start speaking in Spanish. So
Right, that makes sense. And I think, being bilingual is an amazing skill to have, which a lot of people do not have. Like I, for one, am not bilingual. But I think, even being an English speaker and not speaking any other languages, I think, I still find that I mess up when I'm speaking all the time. And I think it's just kind of like learning how to also recover from, public speaking is something that I get nervous about sometimes too. Like when I have to make a presentation or present work to, people that are kind of above me at work. So I think just practice too is really important and like kind of being able to adapt to those different situations. And I think, one way to improve upon that for everybody and for students and for people in the workforce too is to just put yourself out there, like, sharing your ideas in meetings. I think you have to like believe that you have a certain value of your ideas and contributions and
that's great.
that they're valuable in any language.
Awesome. All right, Samantha, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your experience with
Sure.
me and for us.